Hello.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second annual LFW Global Leadership Summit. And also, happy Black History Month. What a great way to end a Friday, the last Friday in Black History Month. My name is LeVar Thomas, and I am one of the co founders of Leaders of the Free World.
My name is Ruby Maddox, and I'm also a co founder of Leaders of the Free World.
So, before we get into today, I'm going to share a bit about LFW. We're an international experience and leadership development program for young Black men. And our focus is about creating the next generation of leaders who are globally minded, self aware, and service driven. And as you will learn throughout the day, when it comes to leadership and international experience, representation matters. So we not only need to just look at current events in the world to see that when Black males are missing from the conversation and the decision making table, leadership fails and organizations struggle because of that. So we're going to change that narrative and breaking that stigma. LFW is about reimagining and redefining what global leadership means and reimagining the global leadership landscape. So welcome, and our hashtag for the day is going to be LFWGLS23. So if you hear anything that resonates with you, you want to share it on your social media platforms, please use the hashtag LFWGLS23. Also, if you think that someone else needs to be attending this summit today, please share the registration link with them. Bring and invite others to the table. I turn it over to you, Ruby.
Awesome, awesome. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. And before we begin, we'd like to thank the folks who obviously helped make this possible. LeVar and I cannot do this by ourselves, and it took a lot of amazing people to make this day happen. So, first, we'd like to thank our sponsor, the Herman Sweat Center for Black Males at the University of Texas, made possible by Dr. Devin Walker. We'd also like to thank our Global Leadership Organizing Committee, Brianne Warren and Chantel Jones from the University of Delaware, again, Dr. Devin Walker, Marcus King from Prairie View A&M University, and Ayasa Kali from the United States Peace Corps. These folks gave up countless hours of meetings, organizing, emails, and networking to make today possible. We'd also like to thank our event managers, Mahi Tedesi and Sophia Lloyd, who were just amazing from Hallpacks, running all the tech and the background stuff for us, and just being tireless and consistent in all of their efforts to all of the details to make this happen. We want to thank all of our panelists and our moderators for their willingness to participate in this summit. The sessions today are really designed to give attendees a glimpse of what is possible, when we change the narratives of who we see as global leaders in the world. This is an amazing lineup of speakers. We are just as psyched as you all to hear them and what they have to say, and their expertise in thinking about how we can all help diversify the global leadership landscape together. We'd also like to thank our participating schools who helped by spreading the word to all of their students and inviting them. And we'd like to thank our exhibitors, the United States Peace Corps. We definitely want to check those out, and also Culture Beyond Borders. So on the break time and when you're not networking, please go and see them and hear about different opportunities they have in helping you continue your global leadership journey. And we'd like to thank all of you for being here. This is, you could be anywhere, but you chose to be here, and we really do appreciate it. Appreciate that. And like I said, please go ahead and check out the virtual networking rooms and the exhibit hall during the breaks. Yeah, we'd like to thank the LFW Board of Directors who believe in this mission and help make this possible every day. Yeah, don't forget to use the hashtag. So after the summit, not only will you get an email asking you about what you learned, how you liked it, please fill that out. You're also going to get a link to different resources and handouts that you may hear us mention throughout the day, and even ones that we don't mention. Our goal today is to make sure that you have a starting point, or a game plan of what you want to do or what you can do and what's possible for continuing your global leadership journey. Back to you, Lavar.
Thank you, Ruby. So today's summit is a part of our Global Leadership Pipeline Initiative, which aims to increase the number of Black males who study abroad, participate in international fellowship programs, and thinking about global opportunities more broadly. So we're looking at diversity and inclusion. We're looking at career development. We're looking at international leadership development, as well as networking and global exchange. So we'll be following up with all of you after the summit about opportunities and how you can remain engaged with the pipeline and think about how we can collaborate further down the road. As Ruby mentioned, please use the hashtag LFWGLS23. So now that we've gotten all of the preliminaries out the way, I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker for the next couple of minutes to kick off our summit, Mr. James T. Ham. He's currently country director for Peace Corps South Africa and the former country director for Peace Corps Uganda and Cameroon. James is a senior executive with over 30 years in the United States government. Building upon his experience as a returned Peace Corps volunteer in Guinea, he has strategically directed international volunteer programs in a variety of sectors, including public health, education, small enterprise development, and agriculture. James previously served as the deputy director, country director at the CDC Cote d'Ivoire, and as the deputy director for management and operations at CDC Zambia, during which he completed a 5-month detail to support the Ebola virus disease response in Guinea. In addition to his role as Peace Corps Country Director, James has served as the Country Desk Officer for Africa region. He has provided direct oversight of Peace Corps operations throughout West Africa, including Guinea, Ghana, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, and many other countries throughout West Africa. James has been consistently recognized for his dedication to international volunteerism. He's a proud veteran and served honorably in the United States Navy. He's fluent in French and holds a master's degree in international education from American University and a bachelor's degree from North Carolina Central University. James is an alum of University of Denver International Career Advancement Program and the Harvard University Senior Executive Fellows Program, among other leadership programs. He's currently pursuing a PhD in executive leadership at the University of Charleston, West Virginia. He's married to Sharoya Ham and has 3 sons, Jeremiah, Miles, and Malachi. Now, I will get out of your way and I'll transition it over to you, James.
Thank you, LeVar. And good day, everyone. Young men, scholars, global travelers, future ambassadors, directors, and diplomats. Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are in this world. My name is James Ham, and thank you all for joining this LFW Global Leadership Summit. It's not just by happenstance that you are here today to listen to me. As LeVar shared, LFW has a purpose, and that is to inspire young men like you into global experiences and opportunities. My personal prayer is that you would just not listen to me, but that the seed of global opportunities, world exposure, global travel, international opportunities, and this exposure happens to you while you're in college. Let's set the stage right now. Right now, we are in a crisis. Yes, a crisis. I sit before you right now from the country of South Africa in the city of Pretoria. And as the only Black male country director in the Peace Corps of their 66 countries worldwide, it's not a mere issue of recruiting, but interest and motivation to get us there. Some say that diversity overseas is a national security issue. I believe that because when we turn on the news and we see those active in global affairs, they don't see us. We need to be more visible in that platform. Black men in global positions supporting our nations in global private sector, nonprofit, and the government is lacking. And we need you right now. In these countries and the continents of Africa, Asia, the Oceania, North America, South America, Europe, the Middle East, and Antarctica. The world needs to see you. and they need to see more of us. We are greatly capable, but we're not there yet. Let me tell you my story. In 1984, right out of high school, I joined the US Navy. I needed to get away from home. My parents were divorced. My father had recently been incarcerated at the time, and I had nowhere to go. So I joined the US Navy. That was my study abroad experience. It was a great opportunity for me to be able to get my first exposure of what life looked like outside the United States. I traveled to France, Spain, Israel, Turkey, Egypt, and many other countries. That impact alone moved me to get out of the Navy and get my degree and pursue something that would get me back overseas to see the world. Because I knew firsthand that military was not going to be a long term career for me. I got out, enrolled at North Carolina Central University, got my degree, started teaching for a while, and was introduced to the Peace Corps. And in 1996, I joined the Peace Corps as a volunteer in Guinea of West Africa. I can tell you that it has been the greatest investment and personal career investment that I made in my life. You can see from this photo that I am the only African American male in this particular group. This is in 1996. But I can tell you that even today, up until now, things have not changed. Of the 45 invitees that were in my group, again, I was the only African American male. Fast forward now to 2022. I am serving as the country director for the Peace Corps program in South Africa. In this photo, as a director, as a program director, out of 66 countries, the representation of us is still a challenge. Why? In 1997, President Nelson Mandela asked President Bill Clinton to, to bring the Peace Corps program to South Africa. At the end of apartheid, he wanted the South African country to be able to see the most diverse group of Americans that the agency could recruit. They did. And in 1997, they brought the Peace Corps to South Africa. They included black men that represented the most talented of volunteers that the United States could find. Those men have gone on to have some of the most prosperous and gratifying careers. Peace Corps has been a conduit for those kinds of opportunities. Research has shown that the numbers of black students traveling abroad are less than 5%. Black students traveling abroad are less than 5%. Note that the majority of them traveling abroad are women, not black men. This is a problem socially and statistically. We have to be able to put ourselves in the platform and be represented globally, and that you are exposed to these opportunities that are abroad. Why is international experience so instrumental in your current journey? I have found that research suggests that education abroad is associated with a higher likelihood of college completion and a higher GPA at graduation without even extending additional time to complete excess credits. These findings increase the understanding of educational practices that can be leveraged to increase student success. Furthermore, the larger positive impacts for racial ethnic minority groups that have both historically been less likely to study abroad and lower college outcomes suggest that colleges can increase success of our populations, us, by lowering barriers to participation in education abroad. At the moment, educational practitioners are seeking ways to increase the equity of us being able to participate in opportunities abroad. And LFW has been a strategic partner in this activity. This opportunity abroad will be able to enhance your educational success and career opportunities as you move forth. As I showed in the second photo, this reminds me that we still have a lot of work to do to get us represented globally. This year, I will retire from federal service with over 34 years of U.S. government experience within 3 U.S. government agencies: the U.S. Navy, Centers for Disease Control, and the Peace Corps. My professional career has immersed me in cultural experiences in over 50 countries around the world. This experience has developed me personally and professionally. I speak French fluently and 4 local languages on the African continent. My departure alone from the Peace Corps will leave a gap in the representation of Black male country directors, which leaves me to struggle with what will be the future of diversity of Black men in international affairs. I am committed to working and mentoring, coaching, and getting you the exposure and experience of the overseas opportunities. It will change your life. Right now, I am advising you to apply and get your passport. That's the first start. You are getting ready to go places, and there are opportunities that await you. I can tell you that when I first joined the Peace Corps, I was recruited to be a math teacher. And immediately when I got to the school where I was assigned, teaching middle and high school students math and French, my students had all these stereotypes about African American males. They said, "You got a bald head. Can you play basketball? Have you been to jail? Can you dunk a basketball?" I said, "No. One, I had never been to jail and don't want to go. Can I play basketball? Yes. Can I dunk a basketball? I'm close to it." But I also had stereotypes about them as well, which allowed me to have a better understanding culturally from being placed in that country. It was the greatest experience that I had in my life. It played a major role in my career plans and trajectory. It has placed me in a whole other category of career, mental space, understanding, and cultural appreciation. I have broadened my horizons in so many ways that I, even after 34 years of US government time, will never completely understand. I'm working on that now, trying to better understand my leadership journey. I've traveled, I've seen the world. I have a better understanding of world dynamics, religion, and things that I see on CNN and BBC News. There's still more that is not clear to me, but I'm learning, even in my own personal cultural context, that has expanded my knowledge and awareness. Navigating global leadership as a black male has given me other talents as well. I've shared with you about language, the opportunities to be able to excel, the opportunities to be able to understand different cultural dynamics. But I've come to understand a greater appreciation for diversity of peoples around the world. When I look at foreign governments, of international populations, I have a greater understanding of their sources and processes of government, not only in Africa, but in every country where I've had the opportunity to be able to go and serve, and even those I'm just observing. This is an opportunity that awaits you. This is an opportunity that will broaden your horizon and take you to places that you have never even understood. I can tell you that when I joined the Peace Corps and I told my parents that I was getting ready to go, they asked me, "Why are you going? Why do you feel like you have to leave here to go to another place in the world?" And I told them it was my calling. It is an opportunity for me to be able to go expand my experiences and career opportunities and get a better job, because I know firsthand, after graduating from college, your parents are expecting you to get a job, pay off student loans, debts, and be able to make a good life. Well, I can tell you that you can get that same opportunity to make an even better life by investing in yourselves, like study abroad and after graduation opportunities like the Peace Corps. They will change your life. I am here. I am working. I am encouraging you all to pursue this opportunity. First, like I said, you should dismiss the fear of going to overseas. The world awaits you, understanding awaits you, opportunities await you, and you have to take the first step into the unknown. They said if you want to go far, go alone. But if you want to go even further, go with a group. Leaders of the free world has opened up opportunities to be able to expose young men like yourself and be able to give them that opportunity to go and get experienced overseas. They're doing that now with young freshmen and sophomore students. I would advise you to even expand even upon that. Go directly to your study abroad offices and inquire about opportunities that may align with your major and opportunities that will take you abroad. I want to recommend a few books, or one book in particular, that was written by a former Peace Corps director. His name is Aaron Williams. The book is titled The Young Black Leader's Guide to a Successful Career in International Affairs. It has a great story and testimonies from African American senior foreign service officers who have served abroad and started in programs like the Peace Corps and study abroad opportunities. They are ambassadors, they are directors, they are former volunteers, and their story is a convincing one. I have ordered several copies of this book, and the author right now stands by ready to autograph one, especially for you, if you are interested in pursuing this kind of opportunity. Quick testimony before I leave. I was just a part of a what we call a congressional delegation of senators from South Carolina, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, who were here to be able to learn more about not only our Peace Corps program, but the investments that our U.S. taxpayers were making in overseas programs and organizations. They were part of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I sat on a panel with other agency directors. I was the only African American. Thankfully, here in South Africa, we have an African American ambassador who is awesome and tremendous. But we need more of us. They looked up on that panel, asked questions, and they looked at that panel, and it represented the greatest diversity that America has. This is unique here in South Africa, but there are other countries like this one that need your presence and participation. But we have to get there step by step. So my prayer, my support, my commitment to you and to LFW and to the Peace Corps is to get you involved. I'm serious about this work, and I will help you in any way that I can. Please, thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for being a part of this process. And it's not by happenstance that you are here right now. You are here because there's a purpose for you in this global world. Thank you. Very best wishes to you all, and Godspeed in all of your educational pursuits. I await you on the other side of the ocean. Congratulations. I'll turn it back over to you, Lamar.
Wow, wow. I'm truly inspired by your story, James. Thank you for delivering such a powerful message and a timely message, and for being a representation of Black excellence and what we could aspire to through our journeys. And no matter where you come from, you can aspire to reach great heights. So thank you, James. And I definitely got my copy of the book. It came in the mail, so I'll definitely be reading it and learning about how to really move up that ladder and sharing it with others. At this time, we want to transition to our first keynote panel discussion on corporate, entrepreneurial, and global leadership.
We're supposed to be the keynote here and giving experiences from our times abroad and our adventures abroad. But I mean, shoot, you brothers tell me, but those comments, those words from James were still life-giving. That was exciting. And I hope maybe we can share some things about what we've talked about. I guess, Tamara may have just been given an introduction, but maybe what we can do briefly is hit our introductions and maybe just talk about a little bit about the things we have ongoing in our field. So my name is Chris Campbell. I'm the senior litigation counsel for Baker Hughes. I practice international law. And I've been living in China. I've been living abroad now for almost a little over a decade. A couple of years in China, in Italy, where our company is based, Florence, Italy. And then most recently, I spent a lot of time in Portugal. And I've done a little bit of entrepreneurship, business consulting, international law. And I look forward to talking with y'all today about kind of what that path has looked like, and to really hopefully give you some inspiration to say, look, I know that it's not easy to go find that life abroad, but don't be afraid to go do it. So Patrick, Lordell, I'll pass it off to you, and then we can just, I guess, open it up a little bit.
Cool. That's awesome, Chris. I love hearing about your background, and I'm really excited to get into the conversation with the panelists this morning. Good morning, everyone. Lordell Rush. So I currently work at Cash App. Previous to that, I had global experience with large live events, and so I ran payment systems for Square. And right now, I'm back in the States on this side, and we're making payment systems and we're making finance accessible. And our goal is to create diversity and access to money in ways that people haven't had previously. And so that's what I'm currently doing. I was born in Kansas City, but currently stationed in St. Louis, Missouri. And so outside of that, I'm a creative, and I work on projects with friends around the world, so that we'll probably get into that in a little bit. But I'll turn over to Patrick.
Awesome. Appreciate it. So I'm Patrick Springer, he, him pronouns. Currently living in the US. I am a ERG program manager for Airbnb. So I'm in charge of the company's global affinity groups. So I try to make equitable spaces for underrepresented groups, specifically within the tech hospitality industry. Before taking on this job, I used to live overseas in Taiwan. I was out there for 10 years. Started off very similarly to our keynote speaker as a teacher, and then moved over to opening my own bar. It was a great pathway to create safe spaces for other Black people, other people of color that were living in the country at the time. But very excited to be back, excited to be on this panel and to talk to some amazing other talents.
Fantastic. Well, look, okay, so we set the table a little bit, and look, they left it to us fellas, so we'll keep the conversation going. What I would say, and maybe we'll stick with you, Patrick. In your journey abroad and defining yourself abroad, can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, how'd you get the idea? Did you just wake up one day and say, "Hey, I need to get out of here"? Or what was that? Can you tell us a little bit about how you did that? Yeah.
Now, so funny enough, my journey abroad did pretty much end up being that way. I didn't get a passport until 2011. So this was my senior year of college. I just graduated, was currently looking for a job. But for those of you who are a little bit older on the call, you might know 2011 was not the best time for finding a job, especially straight out of college. And someone, one of my old classmates, hit me up 3 o'clock in the morning because he was currently in Taiwan. Hit me up and was like, "Hey, Patrick, do you want a job?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." Sure. At that point, I didn't care where it was, what it was doing. I was willing to take on anything. And the job ended up being as an English teacher in Taiwan. So he gave me like a full rundown of things to get. It was like, he said, "Hey, can you be out here in 2 weeks?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?"
Wow.
So legit made the decision to pack up, moved overseas, 2 weeks notice. Thought that I would go out there and do 1 year. Ended up staying for 10 years because I absolutely fell in love with the country, the opportunities to travel, the culture. Everything was amazing. So never would have thought that I would have ended up overseas, and the opportunity presented itself. And I was very fortunate to be in a position and in a space to be able to jump and take over that opportunity.
Absolutely. And before we go over to you, Lordell, I mean, especially going to a place like Taiwan, and look, having done my own time in mainland, in China, mainland, language. I mean, wasn't that a concern? I mean, you weren't worried about, how much Mandarin did you speak before you went over?
I spoke none. I spoke none. I had to look up what language they spoke in Taiwan. I was like, what do they speak? Taiwanese? I mean, so for those who don't know, they do speak Taiwanese in parts of Taiwan, but the national language is Chinese. But yeah, no, I was concerned about all of those things, but I was more concerned about not taking the opportunity. For me, this would have been my first chance to go abroad. I'm from St. Louis right now, but my parents are both like terrified of flying. So getting on an airplane wasn't the thing that we did. Often we were like, all right, cool, we're going to load up the family in this car. We're going to take this road trip to, wherever we need to. So this was my third time ever on an airplane, making a, at least 14-hour journey, to a country that I've never even heard of previously. So yeah, like I said, I was concerned about it, but was more concerned about what would happen if I didn't take that opportunity.
Absolutely. And over to you, Lordell. And I wonder if you can weave into your answer a little bit how it was specifically with the job sort of navigation as well, and trying to port what you might have been accustomed to in the United States over to your adventures abroad.
Yeah, so going overseas with my job was about my third international trip. And at that time, I was working on events in the States. And so we had just wrapped up like Coachella and Stagecoach. And they were really cool events. And I got a call like as I was getting ready to come home after like a month in the desert. They're like, "Hey, can you come over to London?" And it was around the same time frame, like a couple of weeks. And so it's like, hey, like, I was nervous to do it. Like anything new or something that stretches you in your comfort zone is going to be a little scary, As same as with Patrick's, like I need to take this experience. Like it's presented itself as something that I've been interested in and I've worked towards. And so going over there was some apprehension, but honestly, like that shaped part of my life, being able to go over there, just like Mr. James Ham said. And so like the opportunity was phenomenal. It was really phenomenal.
Well, great. And, both of those stories, I think, are kind of how it happens for a lot of people, but especially Black men, is that oftentimes we don't have necessarily the archetype or the role model to say, hey, you want to go work internationally, this is how you do it. I'll say for my part, my aunt, my dad's sister-in-law, I guess, she was a buyer for a company here in the States, and so she was always going to Hong Kong. And when she would come back, she would bring back little candies, little toys and stuff. And that's kind of how I knew to be that there was a place called Hong Kong. And it was cool that she got to go do that and take all kind of cool pictures. And, clearly I didn't really know that I wanted to do international law per se. I knew I kind of wanted to travel and be abroad and get to see the world. But I think that was what was interesting for me. That may not be what's interesting for everybody. I think part of it is just being willing to maybe try something different and to understand that there is a life and a lifestyle that's available outside of the United States. And that can enhance your personal life, your business life. You might even discover things you had no idea that you had interest in. And I guess, so I'm still currently living, thriving, hairless now, in Italy and Portugal. I'd love to hear from either one of you, whichever you want to take it, about maybe perhaps some of the challenges that you faced. We're talking about the things that are sweet and it's good. And I invite anybody to follow up with us if they'd like to hear about those things. But what were some of the challenges that you faced? Maybe how you overcame some of them?
Yeah, I mean, like, Lord, if you don't mind, I'll jump in real quick.
Ahead, yeah.
So I talked about how I started off as an English teacher in the country. Not like, again, all sugarcoating aside, like, teaching was great, right? I loved it for a time, but even getting over there as a Black teacher was pretty difficult. I've heard the stories from my hiring manager at the time, who was saying, he was another Black man as well, who was trying to explain to the administrators at the school and to the parents, like, how do we justify having another Black person come in to teach these kids, right? I'm an English major, studied English writing, English lit, studio art minor, but that didn't matter to a lot of the parents, a lot of the admins who at the time had a very backwards view of who was capable of teaching their kids, right? I think a lot of times, like, I still think that teaching English is a great way, is a great introduction to getting abroad and to getting that experience, especially for young Black men or just young Black people, period. But there's a lot of biases that still happen because there's an idea of who can teach English. And at that time, it was very narrow. It was white person that looks like this, that did this, right? That was it. If you don't fit that, then you don't fit that. And we don't want that in the school, right? I was very fortunate to have, again, someone that was going to advocate for me to really put me into that space and to give me an opportunity to thrive. The school very quickly came around once they saw my interaction with the kids, once they saw how well I was doing in the classroom, what I was able to bring in that other teachers didn't have. And then by staying at the school even longer, I think that was really good because turnaround for foreign teachers was very, it was like we're here for a year, we're out, right? But aside from teaching, one of the other things that I really struggled with after I've been in the country about 7-8 years at this point when I decided to stop teaching and I opened up a bar. So this was the country's like first and fully like 100% Black owned business. I have my Taiwanese residency. So I got the paperwork, I got the credentials to actually open up the spot on my own. But when
we have a party for this group here, call Patrick.
yeah, hit me up. But no, so I still really struggled to be taken seriously as a business owner, as an entrepreneur in the country, because you deal with not only the paperwork, you deal with not only the language barriers, but you deal with the stigma just around being a foreigner opening a bar. So Taiwanese people were scared to come to the bar because they were like, if I go here, do I speak English? Are they going to speak English to me? Like, I don't know what I'm getting into. And then the foreigners were also like, I don't know, man, it comes with Black dudes behind the bar. This is a Black bar. Like, I don't know what the environment's going to be like, right? So we really struggled to kind of get our footing in or establish a very strong foothold in the community. Again, I've been teaching kids for that long. I was already, dedicated to the community that I was in. I was ready to, serve the people that I was there working with. So I really relied on doing community advocacy in order to get that right. Our bar was an art themed bar. It's called Arts and Crafts. So we would do art studio stuff. We encouraged the the university students, the art students to come and like hang their artwork up in the bar. We made it open so they could do their galleries, right? To really let the local community know that this was a safe space for them to come to. Like, yeah, it was owned by foreigners. Yeah, we're also Black, but we live here. We want to hang out. We want to meet you all. We want to make sure that you know this is a place that you can come to. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it was difficult. It was very difficult dealing with the cultural biases that we faced. But I mean, this is what we do. We persevere. We find a way to make things work because we have to. We have to do that to survive, not only abroad but at home as well. So,
hey, I have a question for you, Patrick. Just to follow up, like how long, if it did happen, do you feel like it took before you started to feel comfortable? Like, you know, these things that you were facing, like the challenge and everything, okay, did they start to subside after a while, or, you know, did those always kind of stick with you in the back of your mind as those years passed?
Yeah, so I did get very comfortable in Taiwan. I love the place. I do consider it a third home for me, but I will, and I always felt like a perpetual foreigner, right? The visual differences were very stark, like striking. I used to have a lot of hair. Lordell, this might be a surprise. I just cut my hair like 2 days ago, by the way. So those who didn't know, like I had a lot of hair. Just cut it off. Thought it was time for a change. But in Taiwan, it wasn't any Black barbers. So I was like, look, we either gonna cut my hair, me and my friend gonna cut my hair, or we just gonna let it grow out. And I just let mine grow out. So I had a very striking visual difference. My skin is different. I talk different. I talk differently than everyone that was out there. So yeah, like, you know, no matter how comfortable I felt in the country, I still felt that there was a bit of unease or uncertainty about me being there for others. So that's why I say I always felt like a perpetual foreigner. But it did take several years for me to even get to a point where, you know, where I had my local spots where people would recognize me and say, oh, okay, I know what you want. I know you. I know what you're asking for, things like that. So it took some time to really, like I said, to establish a foothold in the country.
Absolutely. And well, look, you can either take the same question, Lordell, or maybe just whatever else might be on your mind about how you felt, maybe to your own question's point. How long did it take you to feel like a local where you were living?
So I had a much shorter span of time. It was probably about a month that I was, probably about a month is the longest stint I did working overseas. But even then, like there was definitely a difference from like the first day getting there. And like when I was over there, I was running payments programs for vendors and making sure like that customer experience was awesome. And so it was a change to go into that environment after having done it in the US and then going there and then people kind of looking at you like, oh, you're the boss. You're kind of running things. And you know, and it kind of like gave me a bit of imposter syndrome. You know, it's like made you doubt for a quick second, you know. And so that was one of the struggles that I had, was like really realizing that no, the thought process that you have, the life experiences that you have as a Black American, like those are important, and those are things that really set you apart. You know, we're super blessed to be of the demographic that we're in. And so once I started to lean into that, even though there were still challenges that were always going to be there, I did start to feel more comfortable the more that I settled into the fact it's like, hey, like the diversity of thought that I bring is important and it's valuable. And when I leaned into that, that's when like the comfort started setting. It's like, you know, the imposter syndrome started to go away a bit. And so that I would say it probably took about like 3 weeks and multiple trips to really get to the point where it's like, okay, I'm going over here. I know what I'm doing. I feel comfortable. I know I'll run into these things, but I can handle it. And so that's my answer to the question, is like, you know, it really takes really leaning into who you are and being confident that you are the person that is going to elevate whatever situation you're working in.
Lord, I want to piggyback off something that you said and actually ask a question for Chris, because we've been doing a lot of talking with Chris. You have a very unique perspective because you're currently the only one that's living abroad right now. And Lordell, you brought something up about our lived experiences as Black men, right? And that unique perspective that we bring to the table. So Chris, I want to know more about how has your unique lived experience served you in your career? Because again, like you're living abroad right now, you have a very, like I said, a very interesting story. And I want to make sure we have some chance to talk, some time to talk about that.
Yeah, no, thank you for pointing that out specifically, Patrick. I think, so as with any Black American, I think there's two answers to that question. There's the first, the American thing, and I'll give an example of that, and then I'll give a Black experience particularly. When I first started working in Italy, straight out of a U.S. law firm, and, you know, U.S. lawyers, a lot of y'all might know, You know, you get to work early. You get to work 7:30, and you kind of just grind it out. You leave whenever the work's done. Sometimes you might bring an extra set of clothes. You don't know when you're gonna leave. And I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks into my new post in Italy, this is like 5 years ago, almost 4 or 5 years ago. My boss pulls me over to the side like 3 weeks, and he's like, he's an American former litigator as well, and he's like, "Hey man, like you got to cut all that out. Like you're freaking out your coworkers. You know, they're not getting in until 9:30, 10 o'clock. They're seeing you there. You're not taking lunch breaks, coffee breaks. You know, this is part of the culture." Mm-hmm. And that was something I would say is a little bit just of my Americanness that I brought with me. And even as, you know, at this point, I'd already lived in China for a couple of years. And it was kind of just those little things that I think, having lived a life, you know, my first 22 years or so in the United States was something I kind of just had overlooked, had not really occurred to me. And I think that you kind of continue to discover those things. As a Black man, I'll share 2 quick vignettes. First, sort of the one that was a little bit striking. It was back in this must have been 2015. I was in Beijing at the Oxford Cambridge Ball, and I had some Australians come up and ask me, you know, I'd introduced myself. Hey, I'm Chris Camlow from South Carolina. And they pricked their ear and they said, that's the place with the Confederate flag. Mm. And that was kind of just something they threw out there like immediately. That's all they know about South Carolina. And as someone that, you know, loves a lot about my state and is very accountable about my representation as a Black person, as a Black man, especially abroad, that was striking. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you see on the one side. And this is what I'll say to end my comments on this topic. When I got to Portugal, when I started living in Portugal, the thing that struck me the most was that, and this is in part because of my status as an American there, I was able to just exist in Portugal. Yeah. I would walk through fancy neighborhoods, and even though you can't tell because I'm sitting, but I'm a 6'2", 280-pound Black dude, no one noticed me. Mm-hmm. And that is something, whether I've been in Italy, the UK, China, I've never felt that before. Wow. And that was something unique. There are obviously other places and other communities where that happens too. But finding what that looks like outside the United States, I think are some of the things that people should be mindful of when they're considering what life could look like outside of the U.S.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to mention about getting out of the U.S. There are places where we can just exist, and it feels very weird. Like I said, I struggled with that in Taiwan because I did look so different. Right. But there are places, and Portugal was one of those places. I think we spoke during like the test run about how Lisbon is like one of my favorite cities in the world, because when I was there, I was just able to exist. When I was in India, I was just able to exist. When I was traveling through parts of New Zealand, I was just able to exist and just be outside. And I was like, wow, this is exciting. When I went to Kenya, I had the biggest culture shock of my life the very first time I went to Kenya, because there were billboards with people that looked like me on there, and people I was mistaken for other Kenyans. They were like, "Oh, hey, what's going on? Are you going to this?" I'm like, "I just got here. I don't know anything about this." Like, "Oh, I thought you were from here." Like it was the biggest culture shock. Like, but just being able to exist feels so good, and it's amazing. It's such an amazing feeling that we don't get to experience enough back in the States, that we don't get to experience stateside, like where we're from.
It makes you want to demand more of life,
100%.
and not to just accept the status quo.
100%. And I know that we're getting a little bit short on time with this, but I'd be very curious to see how we all kind of bring that into the workplace, right? Because I do DEI work for a large tech company right now. Right. And like I said, my goal is to create those safe spaces where Black and brown and queer and underrepresented groups can just exist and do their job and get paid well and go home to their families, you know, where they have a space that's equitable and feels good for them, where they can just exist without fear of persecution or being treated differently.
You're preaching.
Yeah. I mean, like I can talk forever about this, but I'm just very curious. Like I said, I know we're short on time, but if you all could just really quickly, like, how do you think that you're trying to bring that into your workplace, or how would you like that to be brought into your workplace?
Well, I'll jump in, and I love the work that you're doing, Patrick, with DEI. Like that's something close on my heart, and so like as I think about it more, I'm more cognizant of it, and it's like that exists. It's like okay, this is the level that I think is the floor, but then you go somewhere like Cuba or somewhere where you just exist. It's like, oh, you realize like, oh no, there's like another level of relaxation, of like comfort, of with no microaggressions. And so I try to bring that into like my hiring practices, the neurodivergent people, make sure that they have an equitable place to interview, etc. So in every level that I'm plugged in my job or in my professional life, I try to make sure that I'm cognizant of that, and the things that I realize are possible, try to demonstrate that to other people so that hopefully I can spark something in them to want that as well. So I'll turn over to you, Chris. I know we got a minute.
Yeah, I would say, I think Baker Hughes, my employer, does a really good job of supporting what we call the Black Employee Network. That's our employee resource group. Until I think 2 years ago, it was called the African American Group. And well, what that meant is, turns out there's a lot of Black people outside of just America that wanted to feel represented, that wanted to feel supported in the things that we do. So they have not put the money where their mouth is in terms of not only supporting the events that we've done, donating to HBCUs, and intentionally recruiting Black talent. Our general counsel, in fact, is a Black woman, Regina Jones, and those values, a lot of companies say that that's their values, but they don't put the money and the action to their work. And I can say firsthand knowledge, I've seen Baker Hughes do that. And I think that's one of the things that we can do with our various companies to hold our organizations accountable, is to say, okay, well, you say diversity is important to you. What are you really going to do about it? Are we going to have hiring metrics? Are we going to hold our external law firms accountable if that's who we're hiring? How much work are you giving to Black associates? Are they really doing the work? I mean, and translating that across the different fields, whether that be HR or anything else.
Yeah, no, I love to hear that. I love that, that we're directly helping hold these companies' feet to the fire when it comes to being accountable for equitable practices like this, especially for Black and brown people. I know like Airbnb was in hot water, what was it, last year, about the slave cabins that were up there. So I was very happy. I know for some people it's still a surprise, but I was on the front lines of like bringing this to like our legal team and saying like, we need to do something about this. So I was very happy to see the work that was done to like get them removed, and that the work was being led by Black people at the company. Like, again, like it's great to see these companies like really being held accountable, but then being proactive in doing things as well. So like you said, donating to HBCUs, make sure they have equal hiring practices, really trying to put people of color in these upper level positions instead of just, because it's one thing to open up the gates for everyone to come in, but it's another thing to, to make moves internally for the employees that are already there. So good on y'all. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And well, I will say probably the one thing, and Lordell, this is a real brief comment, that all of us can do, especially for those of us that are living in this international space, is we got to do a better job of connecting with each other. Because if it weren't for this opportunity, I wouldn't have met you brothers. And I think that we got to work together to create these opportunities for the guys and ladies that are back home in the States that would love to walk that same trail and blaze the next one. And that only starts with us working and talking together.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Chris. Like, one thing that I would love to just say in front of this audience is reach out. Like, and this is also, I need to, also be doing this more, but there's so much knowledge in our group. There's so much knowledge out there. There's so much access. And a lot of times, because we don't, we haven't been there, we don't feel that it's there. So like, hopefully that this is encouraging people to reach out. Like, I love hearing y'all stories.
Yeah. So I see that we're getting the gentle nudge. We should open it up for questions. We're vibing right now. We're having good conversations. So what we would want to do is open it up to the audience. If you have some questions, we have some time for that. Other than that, we can certainly continue to talk. I wish we were having this conversation in person, but sometime perhaps in Florence or Lisbon or St. Louis, somewhere in between.
I was about to say, it's not too late. Like, it's nothing to hop on the flight. Like,
exactly, right?
The door's open. So go ahead and put those questions in the audience, and we'll keep chopping it up while we're waiting for those to come in, and we'll start asking those as y'all put those there. I guess maybe one thing that we can think about or start answering as we start winding our time down is, advice that you would have, if someone is sitting here listening to this and thinking, okay, I want to live in India or Taiwan or any of these places. How do I do that? How do I go from where I'm sitting right here in this computer and go do that? Any thoughts from either of y'all?
So this is something I've thought about quite a bit. And my answer to this has changed over time as I've gotten older, as I gotten a little bit more wise, as you know, I got real responsibilities now. If you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, right, 5 years ago, I would have said, just do it, right? The easiest way of getting started is to just go out and do something, right? And that's not to say that it's not impossible. If you do want to live in these places, you can go. You can get a ticket. You can go to these places. I mean, obviously, do your research on visas, all that other good stuff, right? Vaccinations. We want to be safe out here, but you can just go, right? But that's not always the case for people who look like us. We have families to support. We have lives. We have things, right? We have a ton of other things that are always hindering us from doing those things. But if you want to do something, you can do it. But it is a matter of doing your research, dedicating yourselves, and then really setting a plan for yourself to do it. Again, when I went, I was young. I was straight out of college. I was just like, all right, cool. 2 weeks notice. Let me go, to the other side of the world without even thinking about language barriers, things like that. I can't do that anymore. I'm a 33-year-old man. My knees don't work the same. My back hurts sometimes. I'm like, look, I can't. I got bills to pay. I got dogs and stuff, right? I'm like, I can't just pack up and go. I need to have a plan in motion. And I would advise anyone, have a plan if you do want to go, right? Have a plan. It's great when we're able to just say, I'm just gonna go out and go do it. But have a plan. Have a plan when you want to go. Do the research. Look up some things.
Absolutely.
You can get abroad very cheaply. You can get abroad. Most of the time, the most expensive expense. That sounds weird to say it like that, but the most expensive expense is going to be the plane ticket, oftentimes. But you can survive off a lot less than what you think, right? You can survive off a lot less than you think. But I would say plan out, do your research, figure out at least some basic things: where you want to stay, how much it's going to cost, how much the plane ticket, do you need a visa, how long can you stay without a visa, if that's the case, and then go. But definitely going with the plan.
Sure. And so I see we have one question come in. And as we asked you, Lordell, what's the first step you'd recommend, I guess, within the framework of how do I get from A to C, D, E, wherever else?
Patrick summed it up so well. Like, believe that it can happen, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say in my experience, I have not lived overseas yet, but the experience that I have had overseas, like I have traveled to Asia. I've taken the solo trip to Cuba, which is like, that's my first experience of just being, and being open to there being a new level of what you think is possible. Like, I never thought it was possible to just exist, and I'm sure there's another level out there. And so the first step that I would recommend is really to see yourself there, like really look and realize others have done it before you. You can do it, to echo Patrick's sentiments. And so that's my advice.
Well, look, I don't have much to add on to that. I think, it's a culmination of everything we said, just doing it, getting out there, being willing and having an open mind about it. And yeah, I think sometimes there's an attitude, especially if you just graduated with a degree, that you feel like, oh man, my degree isn't in teaching English. Why would I go teach English somewhere? Well, the reality is your passport allows you to go travel almost anywhere you want, and you speak English, and a lot of people want to learn. I'll tell you, that's how I paid for my last year of law school and studying for the bar, was teaching little Chinese kids English 6 to 8 hours a day during the summer in China. So, there's a lot that you can do.
I want to actually touch on that, Chris. Like, we had a comment that said, get your passport. That's 100%, 1,000,000% correct. The first time I went overseas, my friend was like, hey, get your passport. I think I got my passport in February. I think it's expiring next year, so it's been a minute. And then a month later, he's like, hey, I'm going to Oslo, Norway. Do you want to go? And so we just ended up going on this Euro trip, and we created a documentary on the trip. And it's like, in January, I never would have thought that would have happened. And so, like, don't limit yourself, because there are other options that are just as amazing as what you may be imagining. And just don't limit yourself. I
think that was it. Don't limit yourself. First step, get a passport. Second, first step, get a passport. Second step, don't limit yourself.
Yeah. Don't even have nowhere to go. Just get it.
Just get it.
Yeah.
Just get it.
No, absolutely. You can't go if you don't have that. Not legal anyway. Before I go to that last question, one stat I will throw out there exactly, I think, to this point, and I haven't updated this stat in a while, but it was, at one point, if you had met like every single American, like had the opportunity to somehow meet every single American, all 350, 320 million people on the planet, you would have met something like less than 5% of the global population. Like when you think about it, think about there's 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, and you just consider that. I mean, you have one life to live, and what good is it if at most you're limiting yourself only to 5% of the planet? There's a whole world out there to see and explore.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming down to the final question. This is the final Jeopardy, I guess, if this was a show. What advice would you give to young Black men who stand on your shoulders and are striving towards excellence in a global world? Anyone want to take that first?
I'll hop in. I'm always good for like kind of word vomiting real quick. But I will say that your perspective matters. Our perspectives are very important. They're very necessary. And your perspective matters, right? Don't limit yourself by holding back. Feel free to step up, speak your mind, right? There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of tables where our voice needs to be heard. So I would say, your perspective matters. And also rest. Take your time. I know grind culture is very real, but rest is also revolutionary. So take your time. Feel free to take breaks. Right. Same way. Same advice that you got from your boss. Like, hey, it's okay to take a break. Like, you don't have to work from sun up to sundown. You don't have to sleep at your desk. Right. It is good for getting you ahead, but I mean, like, rest. Right. Rest is revolutionary. So those would be my 2 things. Right. Your perspective matters. It's important and it's necessary. And rest when you can.
Absolutely. Lordell.
That was great. I would add to that. Just like be in the moment, like really be in the moment. I think we're always working towards something, and a lot of times we don't celebrate our wins. And that's a lesson that I think I learned every year on maybe a different level. But it's like celebrate what you have done and really like experience that, because that is life. We can work towards super high levels in whatever career we're going into, but if we're not enjoying it, if we're not being present, if we don't have memories from that, then you've lost a lot of joy in life. So it's like really like be in that moment and enjoy it, because like you are an amazing person that's making a difference, and your voice matters, like Patrick said. So that's what I would add. I'll pass it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, and I think the final words that I'll say, I'll borrow from a mentor and a friend of mine, a professor that just retired, I think last year, Professor Ben Davis out of the University of Toledo. He's one of the well-known Black men in international law. And he was one of the first guys to get a job working in Paris in the international arbitration community. Has written articles called The Color Line in International Arbitration, which was an empirical study back in the 90s, looking at the rates of Black people and people of color in international arbitration. And he said one of his marquee piece of advice is that the life that you imagine for yourself, whatever that may be, begins today. And he took that as a means to say that some people imagine that at some point, 5 years, I'll work this hard, I'll be ready. Or if I just do this, I'll be ready. Oh, I'll do that, I'll be ready. And the reality is no, it starts right now. And so, we don't mean to say that any of this is easy necessarily, but we say that it can be done, and there is a path there, and there are people there to help you if that's what you want to do. So the life you imagine for yourself begins today. Thank you all so much for listening to us. We're going to turn it over to the good folks backstage, and thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
See y'all.